I didn't say a word when the HOA president leaned across the table, jabbing a finger at me and telling me I was trespassing on community resources. I just slid the well rights certificate across the polished wood, the embossed seal catching the overhead light, and then laid the county's Aquifer rights survey right on top of it. Their lawyer's lips moved, but no sound came out. The room was quiet, except for the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. I sat back, folded my hands, and let them read the part where it said, in plain, legal language, that my family's name had been tied to that water source since 1954, the same water they'd shut off last month, the same water they'd been billing me for as if it was theirs to control. I wasn't trying to start anything. That's the part people never believe. I'd been looking for a place to slow down, to heal after decades of government work that kept me on the road, away from anything resembling a normal life. When I found the old property, tucked at the end of a gravel lane on the edge of the county, it felt like the kind of quiet my bones had been asking for. There was a small, weathered house my grandfather's, actually built before the subdivision existed, with a front porch that caught the morning sun and a narrow path down to the spring-fed well. I'd spend my mornings there, coffee mug in hand, listening to the slow rhythm of water filling the holding tank. My plan was simple: repair the house, keep a small vegetable garden, maybe fish on weekends. I had no interest in meetings, boards, or telling anyone else what to do with their property. The first notice caught me off guard. It was taped to my front door in red ink, declaring that I was in violation of HOA water usage policy and had until the end of the week to connect to the approved community water system. I remember standing there holding the paper, thinking it must have been meant for someone else. The well was mine, literally mine. It had been drilled by my grandfather, decades before these houses were even built. But the letter was an A. Mistake. A week later, another notice arrived, this time in my mailbox, threatening fines for illegal tapping of HOA-controlled resources. The absurdity was almost laughable, except they weren't joking. I decided to handle it the way I'd been taught my whole life: calm, professional, and by the book. I sent a polite email to the HOA office, attaching a copy of my deed and a brief explanation that the well predated the HOA by over 20 years. I offered to meet with their committee, walk them through the property lines, and even show them the original installation records. I got no reply. A week later, the water stopped flowing. They'd padlocked the pump housing. I couldn't believe it. Neighbors I barely knew had taken it upon themselves to control something they had no claim to. My follow-up emails went unanswered, and the only phone call I received was from their compliance officer, a man with the condescending tone of someone who thought he was doing me a favor by letting me hook up to the community supply at reduced rates. That was the day something in me shifted. Not anger, not yet, but a quiet, deliberate turn toward resolve. I stopped trying to reason with them and started thinking in terms they couldn't ignore. I dug out my grandfather's files from an old cedar chest, the one with the brass latch that had sat in the corner of the living room since before I was born. Inside, neatly folded, were the original property maps, the drilling permits, and most importantly, the county water rights registration, a legal chain that tied ownership of that well and access to the aquifer directly to my family's name. Didn't stop there. I drove down to the county courthouse and pulled the archived infrastructure records, dusty blueprints showing the subdivision's water system layout. As I suspected, their main line actually drew from the same aquifer my well tapped into. Legally, it meant they were the ones relying on my water, not the other way around. Over the next month, I documented everything: photos of the padlocked pump, copies of the violation letters, even the smug voicemail from their compliance officer. At night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and a stack of property law books, highlighting passages and drafting notes. When the board finally summoned me to a mandatory compliance hearing, I knew I had them. The meeting was held in the community center, a beige, windowless room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. The president started in immediately, accusing me of theft, non-compliance, and disrespect for community governance. I waited until she was done, then reached into my folder and laid out the documents one by one: the deed, the well rights certificate, the county survey, and finally, the legal precedent from a state court case nearly identical to mine. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just told them, slowly and clearly, that they were trespassing on my resource, and that if they didn't remove their lock and issue a written apology, I'd be filing an injunction by the end of the week. The room went still. The president's face flushed, her lips pressed into a thin line. The lawyer they'd brought along leaned over the table, scanning the pages with increasing speed, and finally sat back with a sigh that might as well have been a white flag. One by one, the board members avoided my eyes. No one said a word when I picked up my papers, slid them neatly back into the folder, and stood to leave. 2 weeks later, the padlock was gone. My water flowed again, clear and cold from the aquifer my grandfather had trusted to keep this land alive. The HOA sent me a short letter stating that the matter has been resolved and that no further action would be taken. They didn't mention the part where their own supply depended on my well. They didn't mention that their lawyer had advised them to avoid any future disputes with me. Now, when I drive past the community center, a few of them wave. Others turn away, pretending to be busy with their gardens or mailboxes. I don't care either way. The porch still catches the morning sun. The coffee tastes just as good. And the sound of the pump kicking on is all the reminder I need that some fights are worth the quiet work it takes to win them.